So I am thankful to Scientific Committee IC and Dr. Samrat Chatterjee for inviting me in this talk, and I will be talking on current concepts in dry eye disease. So this is of 10 minutes. The topic is vast, but I would like to cover the key points in 10 minutes. So where is my screen?
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Sanjay ji, रणबीर जी इनका स्क्रीन चला गया है. Could you please help?
वो कोई जेम्स सर कर रहे थे इनकी स्क्रीन शेयर.
अच्छा
सर आप मैम आप यहाँ पे ग्रीन बटन देख रहे होंगे, उसको क्लिक कीजिए.
शेयर स्क्रीन.
शेयर स्क्रीन करके होगा मैम आपके इसमें.
ग्रीन बटन के एरो होगा मैम, शेयर कीजिए इसको. यस, पीपीटी खोलिए मैम. स्लाइड शो. म्यूट कीजिए मैम, अनम्यूट कीजिए.
Yeah. Now my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
And am I audible also?
Yes, ma'am. You are.
Okay. Sorry again for this technical issue. So not moving. Dr.
I think click on the screen.
Arrow से आगे.
Yeah. So why the dry eye is important? Because dry eye is a globally prevalent and affects the millions of people. Causes wide range of ocular surface complications like impact on vision, adverse effects on the quality of life, and economic burden because of the poor work productivity, physical and psychological impact because of the discomfort, and sometimes it is signals of underlying health problems. So dry eye has evolved from pre-90s to 2017. In pre-90s, it was known as a keratoconjunctivitis sicca. Then in 1995, it was described as a syndrome. In 2006, Delphi Group has attempted to make a consensus approach. In 2007, after DFOS and Dew's first report, it was defined and standardization of tests were done. Then in 2017, after Dew's 2 report, the definition was modified and new concepts have been developed. So if we look the evolution of the definition, first definition was published by NEI in 1995, and in the second definition in 2007 after Dew's 1 report, and in Dew's 2 in 2017, the latest report has come out, which says this is a multifactorial disease of the ocular surface, loss of homeostasis of the multifactorial disease of the ocular surface characterized by loss of homeostasis of tear film and accompanied by ocular symptoms in which the tear film instability and hyperosmolarity, ocular surface inflammation and damage and neurosensory abnormalities have etiological roles. So if we see a classification of dry eye, first classification came in 1995, while in 2007 it is after Dew's 1 report, it was defined as an aqueous deficient and evaporative. Aqueous deficient is a geogrin, non-geogrin, and evaporative intrinsic and extrinsic. I am not going into detail. I'm sorry, I'm not able to see my full screen. This is coming out. How I can remove? Sure.
I'm full screen, man.
Yeah, but I'm not able to see this one. Can I make it? Okay. So the new concepts have been developed on the working classification. In this, they have tried to keep all the patients of symptoms or no signs in a special category. So if the signs but no symptoms, it is a predisposition of dry eyes, in a dysfunctional sensations in a neurotrophic condition, and differential diagnosis with other ocular disorders. Symptoms but no signs is a preclinical state, and neurotrophic pain in no dry eye causes. So if we look at the tear film physiology and pathology, now it is said it is a 2 layers instead of 3 layers, lipid and mucoaqueous layer. So 3 components of networking function of the tear film. The lipid layer comes from the meibomian gland and it stabilizes the tear film and retards the evaporation. While mucoaqueous layer, it is a major component and contains the nutrition and growth factors which provides the homeostasis. Mucin layers comes from the goblet cells and it is a large gel forming mucin and a small soluble mucins. It is responsible for wettability, stability, and if understanding of mucin will give the future therapy of the drugs. The regular secretion by the lacrimal function unit. It has an afferent arm which is from trigeminal nerve, while synapse from the superior salivary nucleus, while efferent arm from parasympathetic fibers via lacrimal gland. These homeostasis inputs comes from the cornea and from blinking. The tear osmolality is a central factor for in pathogenesis of dry eyes, because normal is 302 to plus minus 9.7, which is a very narrow range. And factors which influences the tear osmolality are the increased tear evaporation, decreased blink rate, wide pleural aperture, unstable tear film, and environment. All these environment means low humidity or higher airflow. All these can increase the tear osmolarity. If we see the underlying mechanism of for the dry eye symptoms, if visual symptoms are because of unstable tear film and breakup, epithelial irregularities, discomfort symptoms because of the tear hyperosmolarity, localized symptoms, inflammatory mediators, trigeminal hypersensitivity, and neuropathic firings. And discomfort related to the lid blinking are low tear volume, loss of goblet cells, loss of mature glycocalyx, and loss of lubricin. Eye fatigue is because of the unstable tear film. So if we see the mechanism, it is a vicious circle. Because of the hyperosmolarity and ocular surface causes the inflammatory sequence, then it causes the losses of epithelial cells, goblet cells, and glycocalyx, which causes the punctate epitheliopathy, unstable tear film, and breakup, which causes the evaporative loss and frictional damage to the lid and ocular surface, and again it causes the hyperosmolarity. So it is a vicious circle of pathology. The new concept has been developed about the pain, because pain associated with the mechanical thermal heat stimulation of ocular surface modified by the trigeminal ganglion neurons, and cold thermoreceptors detect the wetness and reflexively maintain based tear production and blinking. These neurons project into the region of trigeminal brainstem nuclear complex. Sorry, that is V1 VC. So perpetuation of the molecular structures and functional disturbances in ocular sensory pathways leads to the stasis process and neuropathic pain referred to the eye surface. This is a pain pathway. If we see that ocular targets of dry eye, it is going to be covered by the other speaker, so I am not going in detail. Those are the lacrimal glands, meibomian glands, cornea, conjunctiva, cornea and conjunctiva, and tear film instability. So there are the new concepts of the iatrogenic dry eyes. Various these medicines and the surgical procedures can cause the dry eye. Again, I am not going in detail, but mainly drugs are antihypertensive and antihistaminic. If we see the topical, those are anti-glaucoma, and these preservatives, contact lens, eye surgeries, mainly of refractive and cataract surgeries, non-surgical ophthalmic procedures like botulinum injection, cross-linking, etc. Non-ophthalmic conditions like graft versus host disease. The lid emergence also play a very important role, because it governs the multiple aspects of tear film physiology, tear meniscus, meibomian gland, and mucocutaneous junction. so newer concept developed about the lid viper epitheliopathy, because region of the lid margin that acts as a viper to spread the tear film and stain with vital stains causes the friction related damage to the ocular surface, mainly cornea. Newer concepts have been developed over the pattern of breakup time, because 5 patterns of fluorescent breakup time, each pattern represents the different pathophysiology, and treatment can be targeted based on the pattern. If the area break, which indicates the severe aqueous tear deficiency, while the spot breaks, it is a indicates the local surface wettability problem, or it is a mucin deficiency, while linear line breaks, which is because of the mild to moderate aqueous deficiency. And if it's a dimple break, which is again in case of mild to moderate aqueous deficiency or the contamination by aberrant lipids. If this is a random break pattern, then it can be because of the evaporative dry eye. And again, the new concept about the functional visual acuity, which is defined as a function for daily activities and measured by eye opening without blinking of 10 to 20 seconds, which reduces during the visual tasks like reading, driving, working, and it can be it can cause the eye fatigue. So if we see the magnitude of the eye disease, because of the heterogeneous data, because of the diagnostic criteria, symptoms or signs of both selection of age groups and selection of dry eye tests. So prevalence, if we see the globally, it is more in symptomatic dry eye, especially in Asian race, is 20 to 54%, while it is, if we see because of the signs, it is higher in TBUT cases, 15.6 to 85.6%. If we see both symptoms and signs, then it varies from 8.7 to 30.1%. In India, very few studies on epidemiology of dry eyes, and at MGM, we have stated that the prevalence of dry eye is 19%, while prevalence of meibomian gland dysfunction 48.4%, prevalence of symptomatic meibomian gland dysfunction is 32.9%, and prevalence of any one of more symptoms of dry eye in urban population 6.8%. Risk factors are many, modifiable, non-modifiable. I'm not going in a detail, mainly age and race, about the computer use, contact lens. We are nowadays computers we are using more. So I conclude to say that the considerable advancement in understanding of dry eye has occurred in recent decades. And the key mechanism of dry eye is the tear hyperosmolarity, unstable tear film, and ocular surface inflammation. The newer concept has been developed about the lid viper epitheliopathy, pain sensation, and functional visual acuity. And there's a lot of scope for the research to establish the epidemiology as well as for the modalities of the treatment. These are my references. Thank you very much for my patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepshika, for the very nice overview of dry eye disease and the recent concepts and recent changes that have come.